the mystery behind America's missing wolves. For many people, wolves are either terrifying hunters or the beast of the night. Wolves are often depicted with big teeth, dark forest, glowing eyes, and intimidating howls. They once thrived and wreaked havoc on the North American plains, but now they can't be found anywhere. North America during the Ice Age was not the kind of place where you strolled around admiring the view. It was huge, cold, and full of oversized animals that looked like nature had no interest in being subtle. There were mammoths, giant bison, ancient horses, camels, saber-toothed cats, and among them, one of the most famous predators of all, the dire wolf. Now, this is where people usually imagine a normal wolf, just bigger and angrier. But the dire wolf was not simply a gray wolf with a large size. It was heavier, more powerfully built, and made for a brutal world where prey was large and survival was rough. These animals hunted in packs and went after big herbivores that would have been a serious challenge for almost anything else. They were strong, social, and perfectly suited to a continent full of giant prey. For a long time, people assumed dire wolves were just ancient relatives of modern gray wolves, maybe even direct ancestors. That sounded neat and simple. Too neat, actually. Then, ancient DNA studies came along and politely wrecked that idea. Dire wolves turned out to be much more separate from modern wolves and gray dogs than anyone expected. They had split off millions of years earlier and evolved on their own path in North America. So, the dire wolf was not just a prehistoric gray wolf, it was his own thing, a completely different branch of the canine family tree. That actually makes them even more fascinating. They were not the beginning of modern wolves, they were a side road in evolution, one that ended. And that ending came when the world around them changed. As the last ice age came to a close, the climate warmed, habitat shifted, and many of the giant prey animals that dire wolves depended on began to disappear. On top of that, humans were spreading across the continent and changing the landscape in ways that affected the entire food chain. Dire wolves have been built for one version of North America. Once that version disappeared, they were in trouble. Around 10,000 years ago, they vanished. What makes that disappearance even more haunting is that dire wolves were not weak, slow, or poorly adapted. They were highly successful for a very long time. They ruled a continent that was crowded with dangerous animals, and they held their place among them. But evolution does not reward strength forever. Sometimes a species can be perfectly designed for a world that no longer exists. That is what happened here. The dire wolf did not lose because it was lesser. It lost because the rules changed, the prey changed, and the age it belonged to came to an end. One of the most frightening symbols of them still sits in California at the La Brea tar pits, where thousands of dire wolf skeletons have been found. It's one of those details that sounds almost cinematic. Some animals got trapped in the tar pits, predators rushed in thinking they found an easy meal, and then they got trapped too. The tar preserved their bones, and now, thousands of years later, we can still look at the remains of animals that once ruled an Ice Age world. So, even in extinction, dire wolves left behind quite an entrance and an exit. But the wolf story in North America did not end there. Another wolf would come to define the continent in a very different way and carved its name as the gray wolf. Gray wolves were not as heavily built as dire wolves, but they were more flexible, more wide-ranging, and incredibly good at surviving in different conditions. They connect North America to Eurasia because gray wolves are part of a lineage that spread across the northern world and eventually crossed into North America through Beringia, the ancient land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska. Once gray wolves arrived, North America suited them beautifully. There was space, prey, and a wide range of environments they could thrive in. They spread across forests, plains, mountains, and tundra. They became one of the most successful predators on the continent, not because they were the biggest, but because they were smart, disciplined, and social in a way that made them incredibly effective. And that social part matters. Wolves were not just hunters. They were family animals. They lived in packs with structure, communication, and cooperation. They raised pups together, they hunted together, they protected territory together, they knew when to follow, when to lead, and when to work as one. That deep social bond is one reason wolves became so important to many Native American nations. Long before European settlers arrived, wolves were often seen not as monsters, but as meaningful beings. In many indigenous traditions, the wolf was respected as a guide, a teacher, a relative, or a spiritual symbol. People looked at wolves and saw qualities they admired. loyalty, courage, intelligence, discipline, strong family ties, and the ability to survive through unity. In some tradition, wolves and humans were seen almost like brothers, each living in groups, each needing belonging, each depending on others to survive. In others, the wolf carried spiritual meaning and stood close to the line between the physical world and the unseen one. Stories about wolves were not just about animals in the forest. They were about how humans should live, how they should behave, and what kind of inner life they should build. That is a very different relationship from the one many Europeans brought with them later, because when settlers arrived, they did not usually see the wolf as a teacher. They saw it as a threat. To settlers building farms, ranches, and towns, wolves meant danger to livestock and disorder in the landscape. European folklore had already painted wolves as dark, cunning, and frightening, so that image crossed the ocean too. And once fear mixed with expansion, private property, and the desire to control land, the result was harsh. Wolves were trapped, poisoned, shot, and systematically driven out. This was not just random conflict here and there. In many places, it became policy. Bounties were paid for dead wolves, governments supported campaigns to eliminate them, and over time, wolves disappeared from huge parts of North America. One of the clearest examples of this happened in California. There was a time when gray wolves roamed across California's wildlands, moving through mountain ranges, forests, and valleys. But that changed as settlements expanded. Ranchers saw wolves as enemies. Officials backed eradication. Fear turned into action, and action turned into absence. By 1924, the last wolf in California was gone, and for more than a century after that, there was no resident wolf packs left in the state. At first glance, some people thought that was a victory. Problem solved, right? Well, not really, because ecosystems do not stay tidy once you remove the top predator. Without wolves, animals like deer and elk behave differently. They may stay too long in one place, graze more heavily, and put more pressure on plants and young trees. Riverbanks can lose vegetation. Bird habitats can decline, and the whole balance shifts. A predator is not just something that hunts. A predator changes how everything else moves, feeds, and survives. So, when wolves disappeared, their absence spread outward across the landscape. Enjoying this video? Then subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon as we bring you interesting and hidden secrets of the jungle. Now, here comes one of the most interesting twists in the whole story. If wolves became so iconic in North America, why did they never really spread into South America? It sounds like a simple question, but the answer is a mix of timing, geography, and ecology. South America was not empty land waiting for wolves to arrive. It already had its own canid species, and plenty of them. In fact, South America became home to one of the most diverse groups of wild canids anywhere. There were bush dogs, crab-eating foxes, short-eared dogs, Darwin's foxes, and a wonderfully odd-maned wolf, which, despite its name, is not a true wolf at all. It looks like a fox got stretched in a hurry and decided to become elegant. These animals had already spread into different habitats and filled different ecological roles. Some adapted to forests, some to savannas, some to wetlands, and many were more flexible in diet than gray wolves. Gray wolves, by contrast, were large pack hunters best suited to colder climates, open country, and large prey like deer, elk, and bison. They were excellent at what they did, but what they did best was not what South America had waiting for them. Timing also mattered. The land bridge between North and South America formed millions of years ago, allowing animals to move between the two continents. But true gray wolves had not yet entered North America at that point. When they eventually arrived from Eurasia, South America's ecosystems had already established themselves. Its canids were already there, already adapted, already filling the available roles. Wolves were too late to the scene, and there was no obvious place for them. Then, there was the physical barriers. To move into South America, wolves would have had to cross regions like the Darien Gap, which is dense, difficult tropical wilderness. That is not ideal terrain for animals built for long-distance hunting in more open landscapes. Add in the heat, the forest, the different prey, and the existing competition, and South America simply was not a natural fit for gray wolves. So, while wolves became symbols of North America, South America developed its own very different cast of wild dog relatives. Meanwhile, back in North America, the story of wolves took one last surprising turn. After being wiped out in places like California, wolves started returning. not in some dramatic movie-style invasion, just slowly, quietly, step by step. In 2011, a gray wolf known as OR7 crossed from Oregon into California. He was the first confirmed wild wolf in the state in generations. One animal traveling a huge distance reopened a chapter that people thought had ended a long time ago. And he did not stay the only one. Other wolves followed. Packs formed, pups were born, and by the middle of the 2020s, California once again had confirmed wild wolf packs living free on its land. That return brought a new hope. When wolves come back, they change more than headlines. Prey animals move differently. Grazing pressure eases in some places. Vegetation has room to recover. Trees grow taller. Birds return. Beavers may benefit. Streams and riverbanks can begin to heal. Scientists call this phenomenon a trophic cascade, which is a technical way of saying one top predator can influence an entire ecosystem from the top down. And maybe that is what makes wolves so unforgettable. They are never just about teeth. They are about what happens around them. When they vanish, the world changes. The world shifts once more upon their return. So maybe the real wolf missing mystery was never only about the animal at all. Maybe it was always about what humans chose to see when they hear a howl in the distance, a threat, a teacher, or a piece of the wild trying to come home.